everybody, and welcome back to Sorry I Missed This. It's me, your host, Kate Osborne, and today I am sitting down with Laura Mears-Reynolds to ask one very specific question. How do we, as ADHD folks, find value in community? Now, I'm really excited to introduce you to our guest today. Laura Mears-Reynolds is the host of ADHD AF as Females, and she is an incredible community builder, especially over in the UK. She has built an entire program where women come from all over to sit in rooms together and in virtual rooms together to talk about ADHD and their experiences and their life, and it is turning into something of a phenomenon over in the UK. She is one of my favorite ADHD creators out there, and I'm so happy to have her on to talk about community today. When I think about community, my immediate gut instinct is to think about it in terms of deficit. I think about all the times that I have lacked community, when I wished I had someone to talk to ask, is this weird? Is this normal? Is this strange? Am I broken? Is there something wrong with me? But growing up not knowing that I had ADHD and not knowing that my brain worked differently than that of my peers, it was so hard for me to find community with them. I remember feeling like an outcast. I remember very specifically being bullied. I remember feeling like I had missed some sort of pivotal memo about how to be a person in this world. And I know that is a feeling that is so common among so many women with ADHD, especially if you are like me and on team late diagnosed. And one of the reasons why I'm so excited to bring Laura in today is because Laura saw that. She has felt that herself, and she has worked tirelessly for the past 5 years to really hone in on the idea of community and what happens when we bring people together, where we can share those silly moments, we can share the embarrassment, we can share the shame, but we can also share love and support and uplifting and understanding. And the more that I have done this work, the more that I have worked with folks in the ADHD community and delved into the ADHD community myself, I've seen that need. And when that need has been met in me, when I have been able to find community, I feel more powerful. I feel more grounded. I feel more able to do things, even when things are tough. And so when we talk about relationships here on Sorry I Missed This, we're not just talking about the intimate relationships that you have with your family or your partners. We're talking about the relationships that we have with the ADHD community as a whole. And so I am so excited to introduce you to Laura Mears-Reynolds, and I hope, dear listener, you will share some community with us. It's me, your host, Kate Osborne, coming to you live from my childhood basement. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Honestly, I absolutely love your basement. It's such a vibe.
It's a vibe, right?
Yeah. Absolute vibe.
It has remained unchanged since I was approximately 2 years old. It has been this way my entire life. And so it's like, it's weird because I'm like the adult version of me doing my adult job in this place. And I feel like the ghost of Katie past is like watching me and going like, yeah.
Your inner child is high-fiving yourself and your amazing podcasting ventures in the basement. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to speak to you again. I've been following you since, I don't even know when your episode was. I was going to look back, but I feel like it's a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's been a minute, but I have to say, for people who don't know, I would love it if you could talk a little bit about your podcast.
Yes.
And why you started it and how you came to the idea of creating the ADHD AF plus community, because that is so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, so basically, I am chaos. Life has always been really chaotic. I had a conversation with a very good friend of mine. She said to me that she had just been diagnosed with ADHD. And I said, how does this impact your life? And when she explained it to me, I was like, well, God, if you've got it, I've definitely got it. And she was like, yeah, about that. I'm just, gently nudging you in that direction. So at that point, at 35, I went on an NHS waiting list for assessment. And 3 years later, with no end in sight, I was in a really bad way. So, proper mental health crisis, really, really was not okay. And in amongst all of that, my husband and I had moved to Scotland. And with his new job, it transpired that I had access to private healthcare, and I was diagnosed with severe combined type ADHD 3 years ago this month. And basically moved into this house and met a neighbor. I poured her a glass of wine and she said, "Sorry if I talk too much. I think I've got ADHD." And I said, "No way, me too." And at the same time, a friend introduced me to another podcast, and I said, "You should listen to this." She said, "Let's just do our own." And that was that. So we started ADHD AF. We were very much documenting our experiences as late discovered ADHDers. And my co-host Dawn has actually stepped down now. It's me on my own for the last year, which has been really tough. But Dawn did what she needed to do, and I needed to carry on this mission. So basically, I will wrap it up. I started taking medication, and I'm one of those people that it made an enormous difference to. It literally cut through this anxiety that I didn't even know that I had. I thought that was just called living. So it really changed my life so much, so quickly. And having only, narrowly survived the mental health crisis that I found myself in, I really realized the magnitude of this problem globally, and I just needed to make some noise about it because I know how much ADHD has cost me, and it's also cost me a lot of people in my lives. It's cost them their lives. Like, it's a really serious thing. So I've been on this mission to make loads of noise along the way, started a Patreon community, which turned into a literal lifeline that I've met all of these people. We have formed this community and really supported each other and learnt so much from each other. And through that and doing live events, I realised the power of connecting people in real life as well, which is why the charity came about. So the charity has only just launched, and I'm, very excited to get cracking with actually starting peer support groups all over the UK in real life.
So for our listeners who don't know about your live events, I would love for you to talk just like a little bit about what they look like, what happens, and why they are just honestly so incredibly special to the people who attend. Can you sort of like paint a picture of what these events look like?
Well, ridiculous as I am. I think, the thing about the events is that they literally came about because somebody said, "Come to Manchester," as in, let's go for dinner or go for drinks. And I was like, right, yeah, let's go on tour. Let's do a tour, because I'm so all or nothing. So I planned this like 16-date tour with, I think, 16 or 17 dates with like 2 days rest in between. And it was called the Too Much Tour. I wanted to embrace our too muchness, own it. Yeah, too much for you, but let's embrace our too muchness. Let's be who we are. And so along the way, I knew that I wanted it to be a seminar of sorts, but I also have a lot of imposter syndrome always, as so many of us do. All of my jobs have been silly jobs. I've worked in nightclubs. I was a scuba diving instructor. I'm not really a give a seminar type. So I decided to turn it into a game of bingo. And the reason being, it works.
That's so good. That's so good, though. That's so good.
It works in the way that pulling these bingo balls out that correspond to different categories, it means that every show is different. But it also gamifies the learning process, because it means that for some of us, when ADHD presents in a way that we struggle to concentrate or we get bored easily, well, it's a game now and you could win a prize. And I gave out prizes, and it's all leopard print, etc. And as the shows progressed, I realized that it was really important to me to not just bring people together, but to make them feel good. So every story that I told on the podcast, I have a section called The Most ADHD Thing. So I brought that into real life as part of the show and asked people to share their ADHD stories, and I would share mine for each category. And some of them are a bit sad. So I was like, well, this can't be sad. We're playing bingo. We're all together. So then I introduced karaoke. So it's bingo and karaoke, but it's a seminar, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. And we all wear leopard print, and that's it.
I just think what you're doing is so cool, and it's so needed, and it's so necessary. And it's just the applications of it, like the practical applications of having access to a community, not only online, but like around you. Like that's so like powerful and important. And especially like here in America, like we're really struggling right now with that. And it's like, I don't think it's actually as scary out there as people want to believe, but because we are being told these like really scary stories online all the time about how you have to be afraid all the time and you have to be mistrustful, is we are losing that sense of community. And it's so hard for neurodivergent women to sort of move through that and past that to get to a place where they have access to something. I'm just ranting now, but you can talk. I'm so sorry. I just got real excited.
Honestly, I was going to say I could listen to you talk all day. I do. I listen to you all the time. And I've been following you all these years because I love everything that you do. Listen, I have to be honest with you. One of the tours that I did was called Alien Nation because I've always felt like an alien, and it was kind of creating our own planet within that. But genuinely, it's not just a gimmick. Like, I really did feel like I was the only person who couldn't get it together. I really did feel that I was this inept human being. And so much so that I didn't fit into society. So I ran away. And I've spent most of my adult life living on tiny islands in expat communities. I lived on Koh Tao in Thailand. I lived in Bali. I lived in Ibiza, where I'm going to go back, to be honest. And in having those expat communities, what you have is kind of a bit of a bunch of weirdos. You're the same kind of weirdo, right? And when I left Ibiza and I gave up all my gallivanting and sun chasing because I fell in love, I know what a letdown, terrible person I am. I left Spain. I came back to the UK to try and be normal, and oh my God, it nearly killed me. And when I thought about what it was that I missed, I thought, oh, I'm going to miss the clubs in Ibiza. I'm going to miss the sunshine. I'm going to miss all these reasons to get dolled up and have fun. No, I miss the community. So just on a most practical level, living in a community, people would give each other lifts from the airport. I would do somebody's hair. They would do this for me. I would do that for them, especially in a country where you don't speak the language. Somebody else needs to explain to you, well, this is how you fill in this form. This is where the post office is. This is what you need to do. And that is genuinely my experience of adult life. So then I come into normal life and I can't do it at all. I don't know how to do it because I'm used to doing it communally. And literally through starting the community, that is what's happened. There is so much that I have learned. There is so much in terms of the support that you can get. Like, I didn't start the podcast as some kind of expert. I wouldn't even say I am now. I was genuinely just a person on this path, sharing what I learned as I went. And what that's done is it's brought in all those other weirdos like me, and we all connect and support each other and have, built this community that we have. And for me, like, it is genuinely my inherent belief that that's how it should be. And what's brilliant about it is that with us all being so different, all ADHDers are different. And that's really important to note as well, because if we are going to be here trying to advocate for ADHDers, for people to have compassion, your rant about compassion on ADHD AF remains one of my favourite moments of the whole podcast, however many something episodes. Honest to God, because you're right, just be nice is what you said in a nutshell. But it's like, we have to also live that way. We have to be compassionate and understand that I can sit here and say, oh, I'm too much, I'm too loud, I talk too quickly, chaos, chaos, chaos. There is somebody who could have the exact same diagnosis as me and be like, but I need the order in order for me to thrive. You come in thinking that you're all the same, learn how very different you are, and then learn from each other, support each other. But also, it becomes very apparent through living closely with others, your own struggles and your own patterns. I think that so often for people like me that are SD, I am really ruled by my feeling everything. I feel everything all of the time so intensely that can really cloud your judgment. What is fact and what is feeling? And that's something that being part of a community has taught me massively. The cliche, don't believe everything you think, I've renamed RSD to really shit daydreams, just to try and put it into context. Is it real? Is it real? Or is it just a really shit daydream?
I feel like you need to start selling really shit daydream merch, because that's brilliant. I really liked what you said about modeling not only compassion for ourselves, but also modeling compassion within the community, right? Because like one of the most powerful aspects of being in community with other neurodivergent people is that we get the opportunity to practice, we get the opportunity to learn, and we also get the opportunity to say, oh, I do that too. Okay.
Yes.
Well, and then the step further, the step after that is, hey, when you're struggling with RSD, parentheses, really shit daydreams, what do you do? And being able to talk about that, comparing and discussing it in a way that's like, hey, well, here's how Laura handles it. Here's how Kate handles it. Here's how, I don't know, Steve handles it, whoever Steve is, right? But we get the opportunity to learn from each other and improve not only, I think, our understanding of our neurodivergence, but also we're building skills. Have you seen that in the work that you're doing?
100%. 100%. You know, one of the things that sprung to mind, first of all, is that also when you are working in close proximity or living in close proximity with others, I don't want to make it sound like it's a cult because it certainly isn't that, but it's like, you know, we have morning body doubling, for example. So, you know, a group of people, we're all pretty used to seeing each other in our pajamas or with one eye shut, dribbling, whatever, you know, and, and you get to know people, and when you kind of see their patterns of behavior playing out, you do turn inwards. You do start to go, well, if I can see how this person, the role that they are playing in their own suffering, God help them, then that applies to me. But I think the other thing that's really been very special is it's about empowerment. It's about self-confidence and self-respect, self-love, all of that icky stuff that I can't believe the words that come out of my mouth. But you know, it's really, we have built this thing in which it has empowered us all. It has shown us all our worth. We're seeing the worth in each other. And so within that has also impacted not just the raising of our self-worth, but within relationships, we can be vulnerable to end up in abusive relationships, for example, you know, and not recognize the patterns or be recreating patterns that we've already experienced in our lives from parents, from whatever that's happened in the past. And actually, it has been the case in several circumstances that people have had their self-worth raised, realize the situation that they're in, and actually to have that community behind you. There are so many people that would be afraid to walk out the door or would be afraid to stand up for themselves. And actually they're like, well, I'm all right. I'm gonna, you know, I've got people behind me. I don't have to second guess myself. I've seen this play out and I know it's right. And that's what I'm going to do. So I think that's a really amazing thing.
I love that you talked about that because that's something that I run into so often as well. Like I get emails from women who are like, hey, so my husband is taking my medication as like punishment, or like he's mad at me and so he hid my ADHD meds, like things like that. And they go, what do I do? And in a situation, I always am like, that is abusive. Like, no,
Yes.
that's not okay. But if you have the ability to reach out to a community and hear, 15 people saying, actually, no, absolutely not, that's unacceptable, I think sometimes that can be easier to hear. I wonder about how much having access to a community not only improves our self-worth, but it also just gives us the opportunity to run stuff by a group. We talked about feeling isolated earlier. And I felt the same way for a really long time. I felt like I was the only one struggling. I felt like I was the only person who couldn't get my shit together, and then finally it was like, oh, it was this ADHD thing. And then the more people that I met and the more people that I started talking with, I was like, oh, no, we all feel like that, but it's just really hard to acknowledge publicly.
It's really essential. If you think about it right now, I mean, in the UK, the BBC put out some research. It came back that in some parts of the UK, you could be waiting 8 years for ADHD assessment, diagnosis and treatment. And, as I've said, I know firsthand how dangerous that wait can be. So at the same time, you've also got the media. I mean, it's got better than when I started doing the podcast, but there was a time in the UK press where if you saw the word ADHD, you braced yourself because you knew it was going to be bad, right?
Yeah.
So having been through all of the difficulties that we've come up against externally, internally, thinking that we're rubbish, getting things wrong, making mistakes, losing self-worth, all of the rest of it, you figure out what it is people in society are turning around and saying, we've all got it, or you've just made it up, or you're jumping on a bandwagon. You've got a doctor telling you just sit and wait. It might be 8 years. And then the press slating you to back up the opinions of the people that are ignorant and determined to not believe you or to still blame you or whatever it is. So we need each other.
Yeah.
That is what we need. The community is essential because it's still tough out there.
We have been talking a lot about community, but like one of the questions that I get most frequently is how? How do I find community? Where do I find community? Where do I go? How do I know it's going to be a good fit? And so if our dear listeners don't happen to live in the UK where you are doing all of your fabulous events, what are ways that you can recommend that our listeners can find community, can participate in community? And then I'm going to give my answer too.
Yeah, online spaces like Facebook, even on Instagram. It's why I do the most ADHD things in part. It's not just to eradicate the shame, but also to make people talk to each other in the comments that have resonated with the ridiculous situations that have been shared.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to add, dear listener, great places to check out are places like Discord, also community groups. But I would be remiss in not shouting out understood.org because we also have Facebook groups. We also have resources, and we will put those in the show notes so you can check them out because we are working very hard to build community here at Understood as well. So if you are not able to go fly to England and hang out with Laura, come on down and hang out. The other thing too is, and I think Laura, like you are a beautiful illustration of this. Dear listener, you can also be the change that you want to see in the world. If you don't have access to community support groups, you can start one, right?
Yeah.
It is okay to say, hey, I'm going to be at this restaurant at this time. Come on down if you're a person who feels like me. You know, like a lot of times there are people actively in your community who are looking for those supports, but they just don't know how to take that first step. And so one thing that I really truly believe in is that we just like, I mean, Laura, you did it. You just were like, yeah, I'm going to do this now. And then you did. And now it's like a huge thing. You're changing lives all over the country. And so, dear listener, if you are thinking, boy, I wish there was something like that in my community, I want to encourage you and challenge you and say, maybe you could be the person who does it in your community, you know?
100%. The thing that I would say to anybody who is thinking about starting up anything is do yourself a favor and do it your way. You know, I think one of the main things that creating this community and being part of it has taught me is that I have spent my life trying to people please. And it's hard enough just people pleasing one person. When you've got a couple of hundred, you can't please all of them. And believe me, I have tried. And it's been hard to accept that I cannot please all of those people at once because we're all different. And the point is, you aren't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but do yourself a favor. If you've spent a lifetime of masking, trying to fit in and trying to people please, give yourself a break. At least try and have one space where you are just you and you make the decisions because you think it's the right thing and you do what you think would be helpful. Because one of my core beliefs is that there is no such thing as a neurodivergent friendly event. There is no such thing because we're all different. When I came into starting to do events, there was this idea of, fidget toys and make it quieter, hushed performance, all of this stuff. And I was just like, oh, but I don't fit into that space because I've got auditory processing disorder. I'm a bit hearing impaired. I need things to be louder. I've got the attention span of a gnat. So I need you to literally reach out and grab me and get my attention and hold it and make me laugh to see the value in what we're doing here. And then I might just be able to concentrate for that extra 5 minutes. But for others, they do get overstimulated. And so you're never gonna, you can make accommodations both ways, which is what I try really hard to do. But there is no such thing as a neurodivergent friendly event. And there are so many different people in different spaces doing different things. If you do it your way, there will be people that respond well to that.
I relate to that so deeply. So I was at a convention and I was teaching about like ADHD and intimacy and sex and all that stuff. And so I was like, I really want to do a neurodivergent meet and greet. I thought maybe 10 people were going to show up. And so like, we were in this like little conference room or whatever. And I had like color coded name tags of like, I'm, kind of shy. So, talk to me first, or like, I'm super outgoing. So like, I can be the person who like makes an introduction. Like I did all of this stuff. I had like a corner for drawing. I had a corner for talking. I had like all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, so the 10 people who show up to this event, they're going to have a great time. 280 people showed up to this room, and it was so unbelievably loud. I had to leave my own event because I was so overstimulated. I was like, this is absolutely ridiculous. And it wound up being the most attended event of the entire convention. And everybody was like, that's amazing. You threw the best party that's ever been thrown. And I was like, well, I had a very bad time, but I'm glad other people liked it. I was not expecting to have like a whole mini convention in the convention. But that was like a really validating moment for me, because I realized, I was like, oh, there is a need for this. And it was really simple for me to do, because all I did was just reach out to the convention and say, can I have a room to do this thing? And so it wound up being like one of the highlights of my year, but it was so funny. Laura, thank you so much for being here. This was a delightful chat. Thank you for the work that you do to empower women with ADHD. And dear listener, just from me to you, Laura was one of the first people who ever asked me to come on a podcast and talk about my experiences. And it was one of my favorite ones I've ever done. And I'm so grateful, because Laura was like one of the reasons why I get to do this for my job. And so thank you, Laura, for being here. Goodbye.
Thanks so much for having me. Bye, bye, bye.
Thank you for listening. Anything mentioned in the episode will be linked in the show notes with more resources. Have a question, comment, burning story you'd like to share? Email me at sorryimissedthis@understood.org. This show is brought to you by understood.org. Understood is a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering people with learning and thinking differences like ADHD and dyslexia. Learn more at understood.org. Sorry I Missed This is produced and edited by Jessamine Molly and Margie DeSantis. Our theme music was written by Justin D. Wright, who also mixes the show. Alana Milner is our supervising producer. Brianna Berry is our production director. Neil Drumming is our editorial director. For Understood.org, our executive directors are Laura Key, Scott Koshier, and Seth Melnick. I'm your host, Kate Osborne. Thank you so much for listening. Remember to be kind to yourself, remember to be kind to others, and I'll see you again soon.